What if I told you that one of the internet's most trusted relationship coaches has been living a double life? That the woman charging thousands of dollars to teach men how to attract high value women was secretly someone's side piece while preaching about dignity and standards? The leaked audio recordings I'm about to play will shock you, and what happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about online psychology influencers. This isn't just another drama video. This is about exposing a dangerous trend in the self-help industry, where unqualified individuals are manipulating vulnerable people for profit. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how Sadia Khan built her empire on deception, and, more importantly, how to protect yourself from similar predators. Before we dive deep into this investigation, if you're interested in more content exposing the dark side of social media influencers and protecting yourself from online manipulation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This type of research takes weeks to compile, and your support helps us continue bringing you these important exposés. Let's start with who Sadia Khan really is, because the story she's been selling doesn't match reality. Born in Pakistan, Khan moved to London, where she obtained a bachelor's degree in psychology. Nothing unusual there. She became a qualified teacher and worked with high school students. But here's where things get interesting. Multiple sources suggest she was terminated from her teaching position due to what's been described as bad behavior, though the specific details have been kept under wraps. After what appears to be a failed marriage that ended in divorce, with allegations of spousal abuse surfacing, Khan relocated to Dubai. This is where the transformation began. During COVID, when everyone was stuck at home scrolling social media, Khan reinvented herself as a psychology expert and relationship coach. But here's what nobody was talking about back then. She was never licensed as a practicing psychologist. The timing was perfect. Lonely men stuck in lockdown were desperately seeking advice on relationships and self-improvement. Enter Sadia Khan with her polished British accent, professional appearance, and confident demeanor. She looked the part, sounded the part, and most importantly, she told men exactly what they wanted to hear about becoming high value and attracting quality women. But the foundation of her entire brand was built on quicksand, and the cracks are finally showing. The Credential controversy runs deeper than most people realize. On her official website, Khan lists impressive qualifications: a BSc in psychology, master's in education and developmental psychology, qualified teacher status, and diplomas in psychotherapy, advanced CBT, psychoanalysis, and inner child healing. Sounds legitimate, right? Here's the problem that licensed professionals have been trying to expose. Dr. Taylor Burrows, a legitimate licensed psychologist, has been investigating Khan's credentials for months. The concerning discovery? Having degrees or diplomas doesn't automatically make someone qualified to practice psychology or provide therapeutic services. In most countries, including the UK, where Khan obtained her education, practicing psychology requires specific licensing and ongoing supervision. Think about it this way. You wouldn't trust someone with a bachelor's degree in medicine to perform surgery, would you? Yet Khan has been positioning herself as qualified to provide psychological services and charging premium rates for it. Her one-on-one coaching sessions cost approximately $8,000 USD, which is significantly more than what licensed therapists typically charge. The licensing issue isn't just bureaucratic red tape. It exists to protect vulnerable people from unqualified individuals who might cause psychological harm. When someone is struggling with relationship issues, depression, or trauma, they need evidence-based treatment from properly supervised professionals, not advice from someone whose main qualification is having a degree and sounding confident on camera. But the Credential controversy was just the beginning.
What really exposed Khan's true character were the leaked audio recordings that surfaced, revealing behavior that completely contradicts everything she preaches publicly.
The leaked audio is where this story gets truly disturbing. In these recordings, Khan can be heard engaging in explicit conversations with a man who was engaged to another woman. The most damaging clip features her saying, "I can do it today, I can do it on your wedding day, and he's been with you in the social day, and he'll call me," followed by extremely graphic sexual propositions. This is the same woman who built her brand on teaching others about being high value and having standards. She regularly preaches about the importance of self-respect, dignity, and not settling for being someone's second choice. Yet these recordings reveal her actively pursuing and engaging with someone else's fiancé, positioning herself as exactly what she tells other women never to become, the other woman.
The hypocrisy is staggering. Khan has made countless videos about red flags in relationships, warning women against men who cheat or aren't fully committed. She's positioned herself as someone who embodies the high standards she preaches. But these recordings show her actively participating in the destruction of another woman's relationship. What makes this even worse is the timing. These interactions apparently occurred while Khan was actively building her coaching business and charging people thousands of dollars for relationship advice. She was literally profiting from teaching people standards she wasn't following in her own life. The psychological manipulation here runs deep. Khan understood exactly what her primarily male audience wanted to hear. They wanted to believe that women like her, seemingly sophisticated, educated, and principled, were attainable if they just followed her advice and paid her fees. The entire business model depended on maintaining this illusion of being the ideal woman that men should aspire to attract. But illusions require constant maintenance, and cons started cracking in unexpected ways. The filter fraud discovery perfectly illustrates how far Khan was willing to go to maintain her false image. When content creator John Dorsey called out Khan for using waist-tightening filters in her videos, he exposed more than just digital manipulation. He revealed a pattern of deception that extended to every aspect of her online presence. The filters themselves weren't particularly sophisticated. When Khan moved in her videos, the background would bend and distort around her waist area, a telltale sign of digital manipulation. But here's what makes this significant. Khan built her brand partially on authenticity and self-confidence. She regularly spoke about knowing your worth and being comfortable in your own skin. Using filters while preaching self-acceptance reveals a fundamental disconnect between Khan's public messaging and her private insecurities. But her reaction to being exposed was even more telling than the deception itself. Instead of acknowledging the filters or explaining her reasoning, Khan launched into what can only be described as a harassment campaign against Dorsey and his followers. This wasn't a measured response from a professional psychology coach. This was an unhinged attack that revealed the person behind the polished exterior. The psychological projection here is fascinating. Khan accused Dorsey's followers of being everything from adult film addicts to cheaters to prostitutes. She was essentially throwing out every insult she could think of, which often reveals more about the accuser than the accused. People tend to attack others for behaviors or characteristics they're insecure about in themselves. But the filter situation was just the appetizer. What came next showed a level of unprofessional behavior that should disqualify anyone from providing psychological services. The harassment campaign that followed the filter exposure revealed Khan's true character in ways that no leaked audio ever could.
When criticized, instead of responding professionally or ignoring the comments, Khan began obsessively calling her critics through Instagram's audio feature.
The behavior was genuinely disturbing. Khan would call the same person 4 or 5 times in rapid succession, leaving threatening voicemails when they didn't answer. Messages like, "Pick up, bitch, or I'm gonna post your address online," and "Pick up, don't be scared, pick up," showed someone completely losing control. This is textbook harassment behavior. The obsessive calling, the escalating threats, the inability to accept that someone doesn't want to engage with you. These are red flags that any legitimate psychology professional would recognize as problematic. Yet Khan was exhibiting these behaviors while simultaneously charging people thousands of dollars for advice on healthy relationships and emotional regulation. Think about the irony here. Khan was literally demonstrating stalking and harassment behaviors while marketing herself as someone qualified to help others with their relationship and mental health issues. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. The threatening messages get even worse when you consider Khan's position of perceived authority. She had hundreds of thousands of followers who trusted her psychological expertise. Using that platform to threaten and intimidate critics crosses every ethical boundary that exists in psychological practice. Professional therapists and coaches have strict ethical codes specifically because they work with vulnerable populations. The power dynamic between a coach and client requires the professional to maintain boundaries, show emotional regulation, and never use their position to harm others. Khan violated every single one of these principles. But perhaps most concerning was how this behavior revealed the business model underneath her polished exterior. The business model breakdown exposes the financial motivations behind Khan's elaborate deception. At $8,000 per one-on-one coaching session, Khan was operating in the luxury tier of personal development services. To put this in perspective, licensed therapists with decades of experience typically charge between $100 to $300 per session, even in expensive markets like London or New York. The pricing wasn't random. Khan understood that higher prices create an illusion of value and exclusivity. Men who paid $8,000 for a session would be psychologically invested in believing they received something extraordinary. It's the same principle luxury brands use. The high price itself becomes part of the product's appeal. But here's what clients were actually paying for: advice from someone whose personal life contradicted everything she taught, who wasn't licensed to provide psychological services, and who had a documented history of harassment and emotional instability. They were paying premium prices for what amounted to unlicensed life coaching from someone demonstrably unqualified to help others. The geographic arbitrage also played a role. Operating from Dubai allowed Khan to avoid many of the regulatory oversight issues she might face in the UK or other countries with stricter requirements for psychological services. She could present herself as an expert while operating in a regulatory gray area. The subscription model on her website, the paid exclusive content, the high-priced coaching calls, everything was designed to extract maximum revenue from an audience that trusted her expertise. But that trust was built on a foundation of lies about her qualifications, her character, and her personal life. The financial incentives explained why Khan reacted so aggressively to criticism. Her entire income depended on maintaining the illusion of being a qualified, high-value woman with valuable insights. Any crack in that facade threatened the entire business model. This brings us to the red flags that were hiding in plain sight throughout Khan's content. Looking back at Khan's content with fresh eyes, the warning signs were everywhere. The most obvious red flag was the lack of nuance in her advice. Legitimate psychology professionals understand that human behavior and relationships are complex. There are rarely simple solutions or one-size-fits-all approaches. Khan's content, by contrast, was full of absolute statements and oversimplified explanations. She presented herself as having definitive answers to complex relationship dynamics, which is a hallmark of pseudoscientific approaches to psychology. Real therapists spend years learning about the complexity of human behavior and the limitations of their knowledge. Another red flag was the focus on manipulation tactics rather than authentic communication. Much of Khan's advice centered on strategies for getting specific responses from potential partners, rather than building genuine connections. This transactional approach to relationships is fundamentally unhealthy and often backfires in the long term. The gender essentialism in her content was also problematic. Khan regularly made sweeping generalizations about how all women or all men behave, ignoring the reality of individual differences and the problems with stereotyping. Licensed professionals are trained to avoid these kinds of generalizations because they're both inaccurate and potentially harmful. Perhaps most concerning was the lack of discussion about mental health, trauma, or the complexity of psychological healing. Khan's advice treated relationship problems as simple matters of technique and strategy, ignoring the deeper psychological factors that influence how people connect with others.
The parasocial relationship she cultivated with her audience was another warning sign. Khan positioned herself as personally invested in her followers' success, creating an artificial intimacy that made criticism feel like personal betrayal. This is a manipulation tactic used by many unqualified self-help gurus to maintain loyalty despite poor results. The most troubling aspect was how Khan's advice could potentially harm vulnerable people. Men struggling with genuine self-esteem issues, social anxiety, or depression needed professional help, not manipulation tactics and false confidence from someone who was demonstrably struggling with her own psychological issues.
The Sadia Khan case represents a broader crisis in the online self-help industry. Social media has created a perfect storm where anyone can present themselves as an expert, build an audience, and monetize advice regardless of their actual qualifications or personal stability. The democratization of information sharing has many benefits, but it's also created dangerous situations where vulnerable people receive harmful advice from unqualified individuals. Khan's case is just one example of how sophisticated this deception can become in the digital age.
The psychological appeal of influencers like Khan is understandable. They offer simple solutions to complex problems, present themselves as having figured out what others struggle with, and create parasocial relationships that feel more personal than traditional therapy. For people who can't afford or access legitimate mental health services, these influencers can seem like a viable alternative. But the Khan controversy reveals the dangers of this approach. Without proper training, licensing, and oversight, these self-appointed experts can cause significant harm while profiting from people's vulnerabilities. The lack of accountability in the influencer space means that by the time problems are exposed, thousands of people may have already been negatively affected.
The solution isn't to reject all online advice or self-help content. Instead, consumers need to become more sophisticated about evaluating the credentials and character of the people they're taking advice from. Look for actual licenses and credentials from recognized institutions. Be skeptical of anyone claiming to have simple solutions to complex problems. Pay attention to whether someone's personal behavior aligns with their professional advice. Most importantly, understand that social media followers and engagement don't equal psychological expertise.
Real qualification in psychology requires years of supervised training, ongoing education, and adherence to ethical standards that protect clients from harm. The Khan case also highlights the importance of regulation in the online coaching space. As more people turn to internet personalities for psychological advice, there needs to be clearer guidelines about what constitutes legitimate psychological services versus entertainment or general life coaching. The broader implications extend beyond individual cases like Khan's. This controversy represents a turning point in how we think about expertise and authority in the digital age. The traditional gatekeepers of psychological knowledge, universities, licensing boards, professional organizations, are being challenged by a new breed of self-appointed experts who build authority through social media rather than training and competence. This shift isn't necessarily bad, but it requires consumers to become more discerning and protective of themselves. The responsibility for vetting expertise has shifted from institutions to individuals, and many people aren't equipped to make those evaluations effectively. The Khan controversy serves as a crucial case study in how sophisticated deception can become in the influencer age and why traditional safeguards around psychological practice exist for good reasons. As we wrap up this investigation, it's important to understand that the Sadia Khan case isn't just about one person's deception. It's a window into a much larger problem in the online self-help industry. The combination of vulnerable audiences, huge financial incentives, and minimal oversight has created an environment where unqualified individuals can build massive followings and charge premium prices for potentially harmful advice. The leaked audio, harassment campaigns, and credential controversies surrounding Khan represent the tip of the iceberg. How many other influencer psychologists are operating with similar deceptions? How many vulnerable people are receiving harmful advice from unqualified coaches who prioritize profit over genuine help? The most disturbing aspect of Khan's behavior wasn't just the individual lies or harassment, it was the systematic nature of the deception. Everything from her credentials to her personal character was carefully crafted to present an image that would maximize her earning potential, regardless of whether she could actually help the people paying for her advice. This case should serve as a wake-up call for anyone considering advice from online psychology influencers. Look beyond the polished presentation and impressive follower counts. Investigate actual credentials, look for patterns of ethical behavior, and be deeply skeptical of anyone claiming to have simple solutions to complex psychological issues. The internet has democratized access to information and advice in unprecedented ways, but it's also created new opportunities for exploitation. The Khan controversy shows us exactly how sophisticated this exploitation can become and why we need to be more protective of ourselves and others who might be vulnerable to these tactics. Remember, if someone's personal behavior contradicts their professional advice, if they react to criticism with harassment and threats, if they can't provide clear evidence of their qualifications, these are massive red flags that should immediately disqualify them from being trusted with your psychological well-being. The goal isn't to create paranoia about all online advice, but to develop the critical thinking skills necessary to navigate an increasingly complex digital landscape, where the line between helpful guidance and harmful exploitation is often deliberately blurred. What's your experience with online psychology influencers? Have you noticed similar red flags in other content creators who position themselves as relationship or mental health experts? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this important conversation about protecting vulnerable people from predatory coaching practices. If this investigation opened your eyes to the dangers lurking in the self-help influencer space, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're committed to continuing these deep dive investigations into the people and practices that exploit vulnerable audiences for profit. Your support helps us invest the time and resources necessary to thoroughly research and expose these problems. The Sadia Khan case is closed, but the broader fight for accountability in the online psychology space is just beginning. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and remember that real psychological expertise requires more than just confidence in a camera. It requires years of training, ongoing supervision, and a genuine commitment to helping others rather than helping yourself to their money.